My name is Emily Carter. If someone had asked me a year ago how I lived, I would have said, calmly, properly, ordinarily. My life looked like a quiet river. No raging currents, but no waterfalls either. Every morning I woke up to the alarm at 6:30, brewed coffee with cinnamon and vanilla that filled my little kitchen with warmth. On the walls hung simple photographs. School trips, the smiling faces of children, a few snapshots from graduations. I loved looking at them and reminding myself, you matter to these kids. You're doing something important. I worked as an elementary school teacher. My students were loud, restless, sometimes too honest, sometimes too sly. But I knew them all by name, by handwriting, by the way they looked at me. I could tell when they were sad and when they were pretending. That job was my quiet island where I could hide from my own emptiness. I had a boyfriend, David Collins. Tall, confident, with the kind of smile that could convince you of anything. He worked at a bank and dreamed of moving up the ladder. I often listened to his endless talk about finance and percentages, understanding little but smiling anyway because I liked the way his eyes lit up. He seemed like a man who knew what he wanted, and that gave me a sense of safety. I believed he was my future. And I had a best friend, Kayla Johnson. We'd been close since college. He was everything I wasn't. Bold, loud, dazzling. If I chose a quiet cafe with a book, she chose a noisy bar with music until sunrise. She often dragged me into places I would never have gone alone. And I loved her for it because next to her I felt alive. The three of us sometimes went out together. Me, David, Kayla. They teased me, joked, made plans. And I thought that this was real life. That this was the kind of happiness every girl dreamed of. A loving boyfriend, a loyal friend, a safe job. My perfect life was like a house of cards. Neat, pretty, fragile. And I had no idea that it would only take a single breath and it would all collapse.
That evening I wanted to surprise David. I'd finished work early, stopped by his favorite bakery, and bought his beloved strawberry cheesecake. I thought of how I'd walk into his apartment, smile and say, "No reason. Just because I love you." When I reached his building, it was already dark. Streetlights glowed softly. Windows shone warm and inviting. I climbed the stairs and noticed his door was ajar. That was strange, but I thought nothing of it. I stepped inside, carefully setting the cake on the table. The apartment wasn't silent. No, there was a sound. Laughter. A woman's laughter. Familiar. Too familiar. My heart dropped. I followed the sound like a sleepwalker. The bedroom door was half open. I pushed it. And my world shattered. On the crumpled white sheets were David and Kayla. My boyfriend. My best friend. Their bodies entwined, their laughter poisonous, stabbing me deeper than any blade. Something broke inside me with a deafening crack. I couldn't scream. I couldn't breathe. They noticed me only after a moment. And their faces. I'll never forget them. Not guilt. Not shame. But irritation. As if I had interrupted their celebration. Kayla pulled the blanket up, cheeks flushed, eyes flashing. David sat up, stammering words that felt like knives. Wait, it's not what you think." I laughed. A hollow, hysterical laugh that didn't sound like my own. The room smelled of sweat and Kayla's perfume. Heavy, sweet, suffocating, like betrayal itself. I ran. Outside, rain poured, mixing with my tears. I ran blindly, the world a blur of lights and noise. My chest burned, my legs gave out, but I couldn't stop. That night I lay on the cold floor of my apartment, shaking. Images of them together burned behind my eyes. My heart had been ripped out, crushed, discarded. And in that moment I made myself a promise. Never again. Never again would I trust anyone. Love is a lie. Friendship is a lie. Everything I believed in is dead. I didn't know then that this was only the beginning. That there would be a letter, a truth darker than betrayal, and a man whose name the city whispered in fear. But in that night of ashes, Emily Carter died. And someone new was about to be born.
Months passed. I lived like a ghost. Work home silence. I smiled for the children, but when the classroom emptied, the mask fell. My apartment became a cage, every night the same. Staring at the ceiling, replaying the same scene until my chest ached. One morning, among bills and flyers, I found a strange envelope. Thick paper, slightly yellowed, with my name written in sharp, deliberate handwriting. No return address. I sat at the kitchen table, the world holding its breath as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet with words that chilled me. Your life is built on lies. If you want the truth, come to the old house at the edge of town. You know which one. My fingers trembled. The old house. Everyone in town knew it. Boarded windows, rotting wood, haunted by rumors. As a child I crossed the street to avoid it. And now someone was sending me there. My first thought, a cruel prank. David? Kayla? But deep down I knew better. My whole life had cracks I'd ignored. Margaret's evasive answers, the way she shut down questions about my childhood, her fear whenever I mentioned family. I sat staring at the envelope until night. Sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes I saw that house. Pulled me like a black hole. The next morning, wrapped in my coat, scarf tight around my neck, I walked down the long, deserted road to the outskirts. The house loomed ahead like a corpse of wood and stone. Windows like blind eyes, vines choking its walls. My heart pounded. My hands shook. But I knew, there was no turning back. The iron gates groaned as I pushed them open. Every step on the porch creaked like a scream. The door was slightly open as if someone had been waiting. Inside the air was thick with dust and dampness. Light filtered through broken boards, stripes across the floor like prison bars. My heartbeat echoed in the silence. Then I saw it. A table stood in the center of the room. And on it, a box. Clean, new, impossibly out of place in this ruin. Written on the lid in bold black letters was my name, Emily. I froze. My breath caught. Then I forced myself closer, hands trembling, and lifted the lid. Photographs lay inside. The first showed a young woman, long chestnut hair, gentle smile. But the eyes, they were mine. Exactly mine. On the back, Laura Carter. 1991. I grabbed more photos. The same woman holding a baby. My baby face. My eyes. My mother. Tears blurred my vision. My chest felt as though it was splitting open. At the bottom was a document. My birth certificate. My name, my date of birth. But under Mother. Not Margaret. Laura Carter. I couldn't breathe. The woman I'd called Mother my entire life was not my mother at all. At the very bottom of the box was another envelope. White clean. On it, in firm handwriting, your father. Inside, an address. I held it shaking. Whoever had sent this wanted me to see everything. And now I had no choice but to follow the trail. Days passed before I found the courage to go. The address led me to a quiet village. Small houses, neat lawns, air filled with the smell of fresh-cut grass. Too peaceful for such a heavy truth. The house I sought had a white fence. On the porch stood a man. Tall, silver-haired, with rough hands and weary eyes. But in those eyes I saw myself. His name was Robert Miller. He was my father. He told me my real mother Laura had died in what was called an accident. Failed brakes, a crash. But he knew. He knew it was murder. She had built a business that others wanted. Her death was convenient. And then Margaret, her sister, took me. Raised me as her own. Hid the truth. Took the business. As Robert spoke, something inside me withered. My childhood was gone. My entire life, built on a lie. After that, the world no longer felt solid. I saw lies everywhere. I dove into archives, flipping through newspapers that smelled of dust and age, searching for Laura's name. Her death, her company, Margaret's sudden control of it all. It was too neat, too smooth. The deeper I dug, the stronger the feeling that I was being watched. At first I thought it was paranoia. But then I noticed the details. Footsteps behind me at night. A shadow that lingered too long. One morning, the flowers on my windowsill were broken, their stems snapped, their petals crushed, left at my door like a message. The worst was the evening I returned home to see a long scratch carved into my door. One letter, X. Not a coincidence. A warning. That night, I sat awake in the dark, clutching my phone, every creak of the walls making my skin crawl. One thought circled in my head, they know. They know I'm looking for the truth. After that, the world no longer felt solid. I saw lies everywhere. I dove into archives, flipping through newspapers that smelled of dust and age, searching for Laura's name. Her death, her company, Margaret's sudden control of it all. It was too neat, too smooth. The deeper I dug, the stronger the feeling that I was being watched. At first I thought it was paranoia. But then I noticed the details. Footsteps behind me at night. A shadow that lingered too long. One morning, the flowers on my windowsill were broken, their stems snapped, their petals crushed, left at my door like a message. The worst was the evening I returned home to see a long scratch carved into my door. One letter, X. Not a coincidence. A warning. That night, I sat awake in the dark, clutching my phone, every creak of the walls making my skin crawl. One thought circled in my head: they know. They know I'm looking for the truth. It happened a few nights later. I left the library with a stack of old newspapers pressed to my chest. The street was quiet, too quiet. My footsteps echoed. And then I realized there were more footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, following me. I turned into a side street hoping to lose them. But it was dark. And then they appeared. Two men. One grabbed my arm, the other blocked the way. The stench of sweat and smoke suffocated me. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. And then a voice. Oh, come. Deadly. Let her go. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Oh, broad shoulders. Perfect suit. His movements were precise, lethal. In seconds, one attacker was on the ground. The other pulled a knife, but the man twisted his wrist, slammed him into the wall. I stood frozen, pressed to the bricks, staring. His face was sharp, sculpted. Dark hair, eyes like obsidian. He looked at me and it felt like he saw through me. His name was Ray King. But in the underworld he was known as the Shadow. Later I learned who he was. An Italo-American man whose name carried weight in the darkest corners of the city. Dangerous, powerful, respected and feared. His nickname fit him, the Shadow. He moved unseen, struck suddenly, vanished without a trace. Ray always wore perfectly tailored suits. His voice was deep, deliberate, his words few but heavy. He was a man who lived by his own code. A man you did not cross. And yet he was the one who had saved me. He told me I was in danger. That those who had killed my mother were now after me. His words were heavy with certainty, and deep down I knew he was right. But I couldn't trust him. Everything about him screamed danger. His reputation. His eyes. The way his presence filled the room until there was no air left. And yet when he called me princess in that low, husky voice, my heart betrayed me. The word felt like a mark burned into my skin. I told myself I hated it. But part of me craved hearing it again. And worse, part of me felt safe with him. After that night, Ray became unavoidable. Wherever I went, he was there. Outside the school. At the cafe. At the corner of my street. Watching. Protecting. I exploded at him. I screamed that I didn't need his help, that I wanted him gone. But he never raised his voice. He only said calm and cold, "You're in danger. I won't leave." And I hated him for it. Hated the way he invaded my life, the way he tore down my walls. But even more, I hated the truth. When he wasn't near, I felt vulnerable. Exposed. Alone. And when he was near, I felt furious and alive. The tension between us was thick, electric. His hand brushing my waist. His breath on my neck when he stood too close. The way his eyes lingered on my lips. I told myself I despised it. But my body betrayed me, heart racing, breath uneven, heat flooding my veins. I hated him. I wanted him. Desire and fury danced inside me, and every step closer to him felt like a step toward fire. And I knew I was already burning. That night the streets were too quiet. I hurried home, clutching my bag when I felt it, someone following me. Footsteps. Heavy. I quickened my pace, but so did they. Before I could react, a rough hand clamped over my mouth, pulling me back. The stench of alcohol and sweat filled my nose. A blade glinted. Panic swallowed me. My body shook, my lungs screamed for air. This was it. Then his voice cut through the night. "Oh, come." Terrifying. "Let her go." The man holding me faltered, and in an instant Ray was there. A blur of motion. A punch. A kick. My attacker crashed to the ground. I gasped, stumbling back against the wall. And there he was, Ray. Impossibly steady. His suit immaculate, his eyes ablaze. He looked like a storm contained inside a man. "It's over, princess. You're safe." And I broke. My walls shattered. I threw myself into his chest, clutching his jacket, sobbing. His arms wrapped around me, strong and warm, his hand cradling the back of my head. His heartbeat thudded against my cheek, steady and grounding. For the first time in months I felt safe. And I knew, something inside me had changed forever. After that, nothing was the same. I told myself it was gratitude, nothing more. But every time Ray appeared, every time his eyes locked on mine, my excuses crumbled. He was everywhere. In the shadows of my days, in the quiet of my nights. He sat across from me in cafes, silent, his gaze burning. He lingered outside my building, smoking, his figure drawn in firelight. I hated his control, his intrusion. But when he called me princess, when his fingers brushed my skin, when his hand lingered too long on my waist, I burned. My mind screamed no. My body whispered yes. Desire pulsed between us like a storm waiting to break. One night I looked out the window and saw him standing by his car, smoke curling from his cigarette, eyes fixed on my apartment. He was my shadow. Always there. Always watching. And in that moment I realized I had already crossed the line. Chapter 12. We pieced together the puzzle of my past. The old accountant. The mechanic. The lawyer with hidden files. Each gave us fragments and together they painted a picture. Laura's death was no accident. It was a murder. And the one who benefited most? Margaret, the woman I had called mother all my life. I sat in Ray's apartment, papers scattered around me, the smell of leather and smoke thick in the air. My hands shook as I read the signatures. Her name. Again and again. She sold Laura out. She covered her tracks. She lied to me every single day. Rage boiled inside me. I jumped to my feet, hit Ray's chest with my fists. Once. Twice. I screamed, cried, shook. He didn't stop me. He let me break. And then he caught my wrists, pulled me against him, holding me so tight I thought I'd disappear into him. His heart pounded against mine. You're my princess, he whispered. And no one will ever break you again. My body went weak. My defenses collapsed. I looked up into his eyes, so close, his breath brushing my lips. My mind screamed warnings. But my soul knew. I kissed him. And when his mouth claimed mine, it was fire. Pain, anger, hatred, desire. All of it burned in that kiss. He held me like I was his only anchor. I kissed him like he was the only thing keeping me alive. And in that fire, everything else disappeared. From that night, there was no turning back. Ray was my shadow, my fire, my danger, my safety. And together we walked into the storm. We had proof. Documents. Witnesses. Names. And at the center of it all, Margaret. I confronted her. She sat in the kitchen, her hands trembling, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. Asked why. She had no answer worth hearing. Her silence was an admission. Then the door burst open. Armed men stormed in. 3 of them. Guns. Knives. Death in their eyes. I froze. One grabbed me, pressed cold steel to my skin. My lungs burned with terror. And then Ray arrived. My shadow. My storm. The fight was a blur. Shots, fists, screams. One attacker down, another slammed into the wall. The third held me hostage, blade at my throat. Ray's voice cut through the chaos. Deadly.